Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to have you here. This is Reverend Jody Susan Calhoun. And the show you're tuning into is Self Care. What does that mean? Take care of yourself and your cells, right? And so with that, we're going to start at the very beginning of our life, and we're going to talk about birth. And I have Tom Whitmire, who's a certified doula, blah, so I can speak. I learned that in the first grade, right? Anyway, and he's going to tell you the secrets that no one wants you to know. Now, if you ever caught our last show, we did a couple shows together a few months ago, and jaws were dropping. So at least this time, my jaw won't drop as far. But put your seatbelt on if you're driving. Put your pantyhose on if you're not, and buckle up for the ride. Here we go. So, Tom, welcome back.
Aloha, Jody. I hope you're having a sprout-standing day.
I am having a sprout-standing day, and thank you very much. So happy to have you back here. And one of the things that I forgot to ask you is just put your information in the private chat, and I'll run it across the screen so people know how to get in touch with you. But the last time you were on the show, we spoke about so many different things about the birthing process, and right down to how a woman is on her back. And I think the story that really flipped me out was actually, you know what? I'm going to stop. Tom, take the show away. Go.
So what we're going to talk about today is what I call the optimal hour. That's the first hour that happens after a newborn baby comes out of its mother. I'm going to also start with why we're going to talk about that and why it's so important. And I think it's important, especially for our, United States and Canada viewers, but viewers from throughout the world. And that's because the USA ranks 50th in the world for infant mortality rates. So that is death of babies. So we have a horrible, you would think, the United States has this great, program, and that, the babies are, there's no better place in the world to be born. But that is not the case. And we got about 861 babies that died the last time that those reports came out. So that's something that we need to address. And then on the other end of that is that the U.S. ranks 46th in the world for maternal mortality rate. So that's death of birthing moms.
So I'm cracking a smile here because it's sad, at least because I was freaking out and crying last time, but it's almost comical that we as a community have not picked up on this, right? Like as the collective. Now, if you want to read a really good book, How Not to Die, by Michael McGregor, MD, and when you get to, I don't know what chapter it is, but the number one way people die is by what, Tom? Do you know? Death by
Medical
doctor.
error is the number one cause of death. That is my answer.
Yeah, it's death by doctor. Yeah.
Yep.
Death by doctor. So, and we're talking Western doctor, by the way. So your holistic doctors are good to go. So why don't you go ahead and start? What's the number one way? And then if you have questions, let me just back up and do some housekeeping. So in the chat, you can share your thoughts, ask your questions. We do have Podbean running. So if you have the Podbean app or want to download it, you can join on Podbean. I have that running on another device. And then just say that you want to, call in, and I'll see your name pop up on the screen, and you can ask live your question. Okay? Go for it, Tom.
All right. So I'm going to rephrase my numbers because I think I mess up my numbers. So the fast facts are the infant mortality rate in the United States is 20,000 baby deaths a year, which ranks 50th. in the nations that report that. And then the maternal mortality rate is 861 birthing moms a year die in the United States. And the United States also, it ranks 0 when it comes to maternity leave. So the United States provides 0 paid maternity leave. And we have a lot of other countries that are just blowing those numbers out of the water. And it's things like this. It's a lack of care and the lack of support, of supporting our mothers. That is why we have so many sick kids and sick individuals, and why the system seems to be imploding in on each other. And when I looked at all the different angles and what we can actually do to benefit this world, I found out that it's those, 9 months before conception, the 9 months, why the mother's pregnancy, and those first 9 months after that baby's born, that can really, change the outcome of that baby and that person's lives, and it just makes the parent's life that much easier. So that's what I decided to become an expert in. And that's what I decided that I want to talk to people about.
Yeah, and let me just pipe in here and say that, if you're watching this broadcast and you are in a position to change things, meaning, I'm going to mute that. Was that something that fell back there? Are you okay?
I don't even know who you're talking to.
You didn't hear that?
No.
Oh, interesting. There was a lot of sounded like something fell. Okay. So on your end, that's really weird. Okay. So anyway, if you're at a corporation and you're in a position to do something about it, make sure that women have and men, by the way, have the ability to take time after their children are born. We are seeing before our very eyes the destruction of the family unit. And so what you're going to learn here today are some of the things that contribute to that, just starting in the, in the hospital, because we're typically not talking about this as if you're hiring someone like Tom, the certified doula. So listen with that ear, like what can you do to affect and impact change in this regard? Okay, go Tom.
So I am a certified doula. The word doula means a birth coach. I tend to specialize in prenatal care. So I'm not in a delivery room, rubbing the mom's shoulders. I'm meeting with a couple, about fertility or about their prenatal nutrition, and I'm helping them, with what foods they should eat, what foods they should avoid, how to detox their body, how to detox their environment, what supplements to take, what supplements to avoid, and then help them establish their birth plans. And we're going to talk about today is birth plans. And my underlying, passage of where I'm coming from is that birth is a natural process that sometimes happens medically, not a medical process that sometimes happens naturally. And the difference is that the hospitals and the American Medical Association treats every person in every situation like it's a medical procedure, not that it's a natural procedure that under extreme circumstances may need medical intervention. And so I've coined the term the optimal hour, but that's that first hour after the baby comes out. And we're going to talk about that. But before we establish that, I just want to establish what the room and what the environment should be while giving birth. And it doesn't matter if you're giving birth in the hospital, if you're giving birth in a birth center, if you're giving birth in a home, if it's a water birth, whatever it may be, you really want to set the mood. So the mood, when that baby comes out into the world, you need to be in control of that mood. You need to be in control of what that baby's going to see, witness. And, really it's all about, the five senses. So we want soft, dim lights. We want calm sounds. We want it to be warm to ease into the transition. And, with the babies emerging from this, quiet, soft, warm, and watery darkness. So we want to limit like the stress by creating a welcoming environment. So we don't want any like LED bright lights, shining in the baby's eyes. We don't want any loud sounds. We don't want any, talking. We don't want any competing smells in the room. So there's no incense. There's no, burning candles. We want it to be all, natural smells. But also we don't want, the smell of bleach and ammonia and all the sterilization.
So it's interesting. You don't want essential oils or other chemicals.
Yeah, I don't want any smells or scents.
Because it interferes with the bonding, is what you're saying.
It interferes with the biological smells that we're going to touch on.
Yep. And we have a question from Tavern Tales DFK. He says, I'm a father of 3 and our youngest is 3 months old. I have heard classical music helps build brain development for infants and children. Is there any merit behind this? If so, is there a type of classical music that would be best to play while they sleep? I'll let you take the first hit on that, and then I'll go second. Go ahead.
I would just say yes. And I would just say that you can feel free to do your own research on that I'm not.
Is that not your area? Because I know.
Of classical music, I am an expert of you should set the mood, and that the mood would be better to have a classical music background than it is to have, rough and sound. So beyond the obvious, I will pass it to you, Jody.
Okay. So I'm very, very specific about this. So the frequency that you set is very important. So classical music, and unless something's changed and I don't know, but all music is tuned to the frequency of 440, and 440 creates disruption in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. And so we don't want to play general music like that, okay? Because that is not going to build the brain development for the infant. What will is getting on YouTube and playing music that is one of these two, 528 hertz, which I have on my YouTube channel, and you can search it out. And it's actually for specifically brain development, mine, because I run frequencies through it. Number 2, you can also run frequencies or run music, again, YouTube 432. That causes harmony in the prefrontal cortex, and then the 528 is the frequency of love. And so either one of those are really great frequencies to play. But modern day music, whether it's classical, rock and roll, hip hop, it doesn't matter. The frequency is what matters. And if they've got it tuned to 432 or 528, you're good to go. If you're not, boom. Go ahead. Is that in Tavern? Tell me if that answers your question.
So in that, so when you're setting that mood, you're free to eat. The moms and, dad, the family, the siblings are all in there, maybe the midwife and the doula, but, nobody else. It's a nice, calm environment, and the mom's free to, eat and drink and can enjoy, healthy foods and liquids to give her that power that she's going to need to build up and make that push. I don't want to get into the huge, but yes, I believe in vaginal birth. So having, a natural, spontaneous, healthy, normal, physiological birth without any intervention. So there's no opiates or oxytocins. There's no, no synthetic painkillers. We're not inducing the mom because it's convenient for the schedule of the doctor, the OBGYN, the nurse, or the doula. Like everything's just happening naturally. The baby's allowed to position itself. The baby will move around, get itself into position when it's time for, birth to happen. So we're not doing it on somebody else's schedule. And then I would say, if you're giving birth, you do not want to give birth on your back. So giving birth on your back is the second worst position that somebody can, give birth. Number 1 would be if they were just dangling by their feet. So giving birth on the back closes up the pelvis. It closes the sacrum. It closes up the canal. And it's just not the conducive environment to give birth. But when you're on your back, your legs are up in the air. That's why we see, birth as being this traumatic experience, and the women are screaming and screaming for an epidural. It's because the baby's very hard to naturally slip out when you're on your back. So instead, I would prefer you in a squatting position, or what I would call like knees to nipples is an optimal delivery system. And this gives you the proper angle for the baby to position itself. And then when you do push, that the baby can conveniently move out of your system.
So, the one thing that came to mind when you were sharing about not using chemicals, totally get that, and not using oils because you don't want to disrupt their pheromones between the mom and the child, and the dad, really, that too. What about pain?
So if the pain, so it's a process, but when you go through the whole process, you have less pain. If you want to think of birth as like fitness, where it's very painful for the first 3 days because you got all this lactic acid and everything, and then after you get in a natural rhythm, the pain seems to go away, and instead you're feeling good after some light fitness. Birth is like that as well. The people that tend to have more pain are the ones that didn't prepare themselves for the birth. They're often not in a place where they have the proper mood, and their batteries often seem to be drained. So they've been in so much of a stressful situation, or consuming products that take a lot of adrenaline and epinephrine to rid from their bodies. They're not eating proper nutrition. They don't have the proper vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. So when they go to give birth and they go to push, their body doesn't have that strength it needs to push. And then it also doesn't have proper hydration. And when you have proper hydration, you're in the proper position, the uterus can contract more efficiently, the coccyx can open up more freely, and you can actually get a larger degree and a larger opening. So, and then when you have natural oxytocin and these natural, hormones in the body, then they're going to be natural painkillers, and you're going to have a lot more enjoyable experience. And when you're in the right position and you push, you're going to get more benefit.
You're going to get natural painkillers. Can you expand upon that?
I mean, the body, the birthing process over hundreds of years isn't designed to be, in this painful, traumatic event. That's just kind of what we see on TV. When you go through the whole process and it becomes a natural process without that intervention, you don't find that the moms are screaming, for painkillers and to have an induction.
Really? So that's a shift in my mindset. Because, I'm thinking I'm in there. Well, I mean, I never had kids. I'm 60. I don't have those parts anymore. So I'm definitely not having kids. But if I were, I'm thinking lavender and frankincense, right? Like that's what I would think. Tavern Tales says, I think I'll look into the link after the video. Thank you. Thank you. So the links are posted, everybody. If you're looking for music to play for your children that create harmony and love in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, and actually does brain correction, brain waves. So using, by the way, the Rife, the true Rife. So, but I think that it's, really quite the shift in mindset to get a woman to go into labor, because we have been really programmed otherwise.
Most of the time, the woman's going into labor way too early, and their body's not prepared or ready, and that's why they have the pain and the complications.
Yeah, Naima Latif says, great birthing advice. I did everything you suggested for the natural birth of my daughter, which was about 30 years ago, I think, or 27 or something, except the squatting. I wish I had known about that.
Yeah. If you see Indigenous women give birth, it's kind of like they're walking and then they just kind of squat down and they can reach and pull out their own baby.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a beautiful thing, which is, we've all been programmed, to think that birth has to be painful, which is why I decided not to have kids at age 12 or 13, I think it was. I mean, that was high school, right? They showed me the movie and I'm like, I'm out. Yeah. I mean, best birth control ever. right? Show Jody the movie. So what else do we need to know?
All right, so the mood is set. The baby's not induced. The mom is, reaching, and she's gonna have birth. So what I like to do is I like to have the baby there, and what the society has come to term as catching the baby. But my
Mhm.
preference is, the whole family's in there, everybody's got their shirt off, and the father then catches the baby, looks the baby in the eye, takes a couple steps, and then presents the baby to the mother. What I don't want is, I don't want the doctor to be the first one that puts their hands on the baby, the first one that establishes that touch, feel, that smell. I want the father to be the first one. I want the mom to be the second one. And then that's where we begin what is called the optimal hour. And that optimal hour is the first 60 minutes of alone time with the baby, where it's just the parents and the baby. If the siblings are in there, fine, but it's just the parents and the baby alone for an hour. The doctor will leave, the midwife will leave, the doula will leave, and the baby is put on the mother's bare chest. So we call that skin to skin. And the reason we're doing that is because the mother's body is going to help regulate the temperature for the baby, but this skin to skin contact establishes a lifelong love bond and connection. So it's also, the baby's heartbeat is going to be on the mom. The mom's going to feel the baby's heartbeat. The baby's going to feel the mom. The mom feels the baby. The blood pressure is rolling, and then it's going to kind of like tell the baby, when the baby's ear is on the chest, it's going to tell the baby, oh, the mom's alive. The mom survived birth because I can, feel the heartbeat. And the same thing, to the mother. And then the skin then starts to signal that way it's time to produce breast milk. And then so this desire to breastfeed starts to come in, and then we're helping to seed the microbiome. But it just hits on all the natural instincts of the baby, and this signaling that they're alive and thriving, that they can snuggle, and to stimulate emotions of joy and oxytocin, love, epinephrines and prolactins, and it just creates this beautiful environment. And then the opposite of that skin to skin would be swaddling. So after a newborn infant baby is born, you do not want to swaddle the baby. And swaddling means wrapping the baby up tightly in a blanket. So the baby does not want to be tightly wrapped or bound in the blanket. The baby wants, freedom. So it's coming from the womb, where it was able to naturally move, and now it wants to be able to move and explore its
Yes.
environment.
The first thing we're doing is restricting the child.
Yeah.
Right.
So it restricts growth. It restricts development. If you swaddle like consistently, it delays walking, increases hip problems, trouble regulating temperature. So we want skin to skin. We don't want any swaddling, and we want the freedom of movement. And then the other part with swaddling is we don't want a blanket that's full of chemicals. So often you'll see the white blanket with the pink and blue that's probably washed just in the hospital, washing. They probably used a dryer sheet, and it's probably full of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and all the chemicals that are in the
byproduct of the chlorine, right? Because they're using chlorine because they got to disinfect it. And not to mention that their water's not filtered. And so if their water's not filtered, that, on average, any water supply will have upwards of 18 different contaminants, all of which are causing stress, anxiety, and ultimately cancer, Parkinson's, and other neurological dysfunctions. So I want to kind of bring this into the fold for people, because I like to take this back to nature, because we are, supposed to be natural. And years ago, I was exploring raising birds. Now, as you know, I have two beautiful parrots. And when you raise a bird, and so this is what I had learned, the very first thing, so that they're comfortable, So whatever you're moving is actually causing that noise, just so you know. So whenever you move, the chick is hatched. We as humans are supposed to go in and connect with that bird right away. Now, I haven't done this, but the concept being it makes them comfortable with the smell of humans, hand feed them so they're comfortable with people, right? Not necessarily comfortable with other birds, but with people. And so, the concept is what you're sharing is really, I just want people to know this is real. Like, this is real. And you wouldn't see a horse or a tiger or an elephant, laying on its back to give birth.
Yeah.
Really. Could you imagine, like, all hooves up trying to
Yeah. The reason that a woman is conditioned to give birth on her back is because it's the easiest position for the doctor or the OBGYN or the nurse to be able to just roll over there, sit on a stool, and have perfect vision. So it's most convenient for the medical community and it's least convenient for the mother.
Yeah, and thank you for calling her mother, not the patient.
Yeah.
All right. So Naima has a question. She wants to know, how do you make sure the birthing area is the right temperature? Unfortunately, the room I gave birth in 34 years ago was a cold hospital room. I'm so sorry to hear that. Go ahead. Tom, take
And
it away.
that's part of our setting the mood, is just being able to control your environment, to know that the hospital is not going to take your best interests or your suggestions or even follow your birth plan, so that you need to find either a birthing center, use your own home or find somebody else's home or business that you can use as a place to give birth, that has, the towels and the blankets that you want, that you can control the temperature and the thermostat, or you can bring in a heating element, and everything is in place ready for you to go.
Yeah, and I would, add to that, making sure that you're neutralizing the electromagnetic frequencies during that birthing process. And that's another show. But if you're interested in making sure that the frequencies are neutralized, that's important. I also want to just thank. We have a lot of people watching in the Facebook group I have, which is Shifting Your Mindset to Reclaim Your Health on Facebook. And we have Vieta Robinson. Thank you. Charles Key, Joe DeMario, Dr. Steven Spencer. How are you, my friend? Mike Zielinski. So good to see you, see your name. And thank you for joining in and hearing what Tom Whitmire has to say. So if anybody knows anybody who is pregnant, thinking about getting pregnant, you really want to give Tom a call at 305-771-1414, or, refer your friends and or patients to Tom, because, he is amazing. What else do we need to know? So we're doing this in 60 minutes here today, guys.
Yeah, I do have a website. It's sproutstanding.com. My birth section is sproutstanding.com/birth. And there you can find an entire course. So if anything that I talk about sparks an interest in you, I do have this as part of a course. And that course is about 756 plus pages of a course book. It includes one-on-one coaching. There's a video series that talks about, prenatal nutrition, supplements. And then you get an entire syllabus with 14 modules, and you go from module to module in that course.
Tom, can you tell Vieta Robinson where you're located?
I move around the country. So I'm from the Michigan area. So I was born and raised in Flushing, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
In mid-January, I'll end up back in Florida. So anywhere I'm moved from between the West Palm Beach area and Hollywood Beach. And then I'm often in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, or Phoenix, Arizona as well, where I have friends and family.
Wonderful. So I know that Vieta's in the Florida area, so that's probably and she's a holistic life coach. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that's where that question's rooted.
So West Palm Beach is usually my Florida connection.
Cool.
So after the baby is born, and we're talking about the newborn being in that optimal hour. What we're really trying to do is establish that bond between the mother, the father, and the baby. And we do that by concentrating on the senses. So sight, touch, smell, hearing, and the taste senses, and then allowing that baby to explore its world with using visual, auditory, tactile, and kinesthetic stimuli. And the one that we're going to talk on next is eye contact. So, yes, after you have that skin to skin and you're holding that baby, you want to look the baby directly in the eyes and do eye gazing, because eye gazing establishes a lifelong love bond and connection. And like the other senses, it tells the mom that the baby is alive and that the baby survived birth, and then to produce special hormones that activate the neurobiology of love. So,
Yeah, and there's a whole video on that, Tom, and the still face experiment. Are you familiar?
no.
So the still face experiment demonstrates in probably like a 3-minute video. We're not going to show it today, um, but you all can look it up. It's still face experiment, and so when the mother is making contact with the baby, baby's happy. It's in its homeostasis. The mom then turns away and will not look at the baby, and the baby goes nuts, like nuts, nuts, nuts. And, just to say that that eye contact and knowing that there's a connection and that you're loved is so important. And that I think that just stays with you from day one, right?
Yeah,
And then Vieta Robinson has a question for you, Tom. She wants to know if you can recommend a midwife in Florida.
I certainly can. I can send her a text after.
That sounds wonderful. So I will connect you and Vieta Robinson afterwards.
I
Okay.
happen to know the best. Yeah, so the eye contact, what you just said, is that it's creating like a recognition and an identity. So
Mhm.
it's establishing like this is the identity of the baby and of the mom. And what we don't want is we don't want the nurse, the midwife, the doctor, the doula, or a staff member at that birth to be the first one that gazes into that baby's eyes. And then that, identity or, recognition is established with somebody else that's not going to be part of that baby's life.
Right. And I actually do have this still face experiment. And while I'm not going to play the video, I am going to share the link um, in the thread and just kind of I'll show it to you guys just so you can see what we're referring to. But it's really profound. And when I was disabled and going to my doctor, Michelle Kukla, for 5 years. As I transitioned back into work, um, I was trying to find a way to connect to people on a level and noticed that some people had a problem looking me in the eye. And that's when she shared this still face experiment with me. And so what I think this, for me, I think what this translates to is that when we can't, connect with people and we're not comfortable looking each other in the eye, where does that come from? Right? Being rejected probably as a kid. Or,
Yes.
like that. I mean, Tom, you and I look each other in the eye all the time. We have Dr. Steven Spencer on here. We talk, we're like we're right in each other's face and we're talking and we're listening to each other and we're connecting. And so if you're not connecting with people, there are opportunities to reverse all of this, just, like that. And I'll share that link in the thread. So go ahead, Tom.
As part of the optimal hour after birth, and when you got the infant and you're looking, them in the eye and you're establishing that eye contact, when you say what would break that, and why do people not have that established relationship between the parent and the baby, that's because in most often in circumstances involving a hospital, but even with some midwives, is that they're going to come and try to immediately put eye ointment in the baby's eyes immediately after birth. So
Yeah.
these eye drops prevent the baby from looking in the eye and creating a love bond with the parent. So I highly urge, and it's my opinion, to present the information to the families to decline this eye ointment, because the mom does not have a vaginal infection that's going to transfer into the eyes of the baby. So they do that because there's an assumption that the mom has chlamydia or gonorrhea or some sexually transmitted infection. That's the only reason it's done. And they're putting like the eye ointment, for those that don't know, it's like it's an antibiotic is what they would call it. Like an erythromycin ointment that they say is going to, combat an infection that may come vaginally from the mom. But that's completely just outdated and false science. Plus the colostrum, which is the first milk that the baby's going to drink breastfeeding right there in the optimal hour, is a natural antibacterial agent, and the baby's going to be surrounded by antibacterial agents from that natural birth. So there's absolutely no scientific validation why a baby would need to receive any sort of eye ointment after they've been born.
So, I have two things to add about that way. One is Dr. Steve's comment here. It says Facebook user. I can see that it's Dr. Steven because he's in my group. He says low self-esteem is a reason for inability and discomfort in looking into another's eyes. Most have difficulty looking at themselves. It's true. That's why Zoom was so horrible during COVID. He said, only way to break the pattern is to face it. Thank you, Dr. Steven. You're so wise. And yeah, I mean, the only way to break any pattern, right, is we have to look at our shadow. We have to look at our past. Um, um, and then there was something else, but I guess we'll skip that because I can't remember. And then Naima has a question. Says, what about the bright lights most hospital rooms use during childbirth? Could they be harmful? Well, let me just answer that question. Yes. So we have halogen lights, which were mostly available when you gave birth, Naima. And then, but now we have, and I don't know why I'm having issues remembering certain things, but the fluorescent lights are really harmful to human DNA. What's those little squiggly ones, Tom?
The LEDs?
LEDs. Thank you. Sorry, I don't use this stuff. It's like kind of like been out of my area, but those are cancer causing, right? And so we only use halogen here, and people who are light sensitive that come to see me are not light sensitive here. What you're sensitive to is all the mercury that's coming out of the fluorescent, and all the other harmful chemicals that are in there. But go ahead. Sorry.
An extreme amount of mercury. You used to be able to take a compact fluorescent light to a Lowe's or a Home Depot, and then they would recycle it for you. And the last time I took one there, they said, well, we've discontinued that recycling program. I called every single recycling center in the area to see if they would take them, and none took them. And everybody said you just have to put them out to the trash. So I put them out to the trash way down from where I lived, but it just out of curiosity, I heard the garbage truck that day. So I watched just to see what they were going to do with these bulbs. And it's like one of those things, like 1 in a million, and it happened like slow motion. There was 2 garbage guys that were both at the back of the truck, and the one picked up that big 4-foot compact fluorescent light that goes in like an office building, and he took it, and while the other guy was putting garbage in the truck, he pretended it was like a Star Wars lightsaber and then broke it over the guy's back. So you have all that gas and all that mercury that just exploded, into the atmosphere and onto the road. But there's huge amounts of mercury in those. And the other bulbs that I believe the terminology for other bulbs is incandescent lights, which is still where you're just, and they're very hard to find. I would recommend you go to the store and buy bulk amount of incandescent.
Oh, that's weird. I have my phone on do not disturb, and yet I got disturbed. All right.
Could be coming through your computer. So get incandescent lights. They put off a softer, warmer orange glow. The other lights are putting out primarily a blue light, and our eyes get tricked by blue lights, and often in dark situations they're mimicking like the sun, and then they'll throw off your sleeping patterns as well.
So, Dr. Steve has a great question. He says, well, can you do outside births if possible? Like outside? Yeah. I mean, like, to me, that would be awesome. Like, to, if I was going to have a kid, if I was like, 20 years old again, and had all my parts, I think having your birth outside. But that, Tom, you have to answer that. And what's a full spectrum bulb? Does anybody know? Because Stephen, I don't know what that is.
It's just gonna so the light is in a spectrum, and as opposed to just putting out parts of that spectrum, it puts out the full spectrum. So it's mimicking the sun.
Okay, that's what we have then here. We have bulbs that mimic the sun. I just didn't have the terminology.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. And what do you say to Stephen about, what do you say to Dr. Stephen about the doing the birth outside?
Yeah, I totally recommend. I mean, most indigenous people are just out doing their everyday thing, and then I feel birth coming, and then they have birth where they are. It's not this.
Oops, here it comes. Oops, here it comes.
Yeah, in the United States, though, birth is like determined by math. So you go and you get, some radiation that they call ultrasound, and then they make a hypothesis or an estimate of when your due date should be based on complete pseudoscience, and then people say that's my due date, and then they start to get nervous, if their baby is going to be after their due date or whatever it may be, and then and then somebody tells them, oh, you should induce, or the ultrasound technician makes up, oh, the head could be too big, and there's all these factors, and the people are so stressed that they don't know what's going on, where we just need it to be a complete natural process where you don't need an estimation of when this should be, or told this amount of weeks is when you should be giving birth, because that just creates stress. So a lot of people, I recommend to have a due date, which is where the mother and father to be will go on a date, as out on the town, or go to a movie, or go to dinner, so they don't have to worry about they're not having the baby on their due date and something's wrong.
Well, I think that's an awesome suggestion. And let me just tell you some reality. I remember when my sister was pregnant, so whatever, 30 years ago, and she's like, as big as a flippin' house. I mean, she had big babies, right? And so I have to tell you, a date was probably not on her list of things to do. I'm just saying, I'm not knocking what you're saying. I haven't been pregnant, so I can't even speak to it, but I've observed. And maybe, so what I'm hearing is maybe, quite possibly, if you're doing things the way we should have done to begin with, which is the right nutrition and the exercise and the right water and the supplementation that you've talked about in the past, coming up to the due date is just another day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, just make dinner, stay at home, but you don't have to get stressed out and worry that, oh my gosh, the doctor gave us this date. It's not a countdown. Like, birth is not a 9-month disease that needs to be healed on your due date. It's a natural that needs to extend and happen naturally, and you can have people a week early or 3 weeks later. Like, the baby, it wants to come out when it wants to come out. It's going to tell you when this wants to come out. It's going to signal you, and when you go through that process, then you have all the hormones in place, and it's a lot easier on the body, and it's less stressful for everyone.
I'm so sorry. I love talking to you. Just do. And I love hearing what you have to say. And it's really hilarious because it's kind of like, most of the world is in fight or flight instead of rest and digest. And we are programmed to make an emergency out of every little thing. And I'm like, no, you don't. Don't have to do that. You don't have to race to the finish line. And if you're late, guess what? You're okay. Still get there, right?
Yeah.
So Vieta said, watched a nomad woman in the Middle East give birth in a tent with women assisting. It was a beautiful sight. That would be amazing, right? So, like, what I think I hear you saying, and, I really I know we have to bring the love and the family back into this process, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Um,
it's really in charge of, like, what I tell a father, it's like your role in this is to do all of the research and to make all the phone calls and to set the birth plan and to figure out what it is that you want to do. And then you sit down with your wife and then you present her all this information and say, these are our options. This is, what my opinion is. What do you think we should do? Then as a couple, you make that decision, but it's the role of the father to do the research to figure out how the couple wants to do it and then present it to the wife. So that makes the father part of the process, as opposed to the father is just, he's just over there mowing the lawn and the woman's doing all the research and doing all. So we want to make it, the whole family come together, and then we want that father there in the birth situation as well. And then the father needs to, be defending the wife and taking care of the wife and making sure that the doctor, the OBGYN, the nurses, the midwife, the doula are following the birth plan. And they shouldn't just be an innocent, bystander. They should stand up and say, well, it's my wife and I's decision that we don't do it that way, that we stick to this way, and that's our birth plan. And when that happens, and the mother, the wife, is feeling defended, that she has, her knight in shining armor there is taking care of her, and she doesn't have to worry about the external. She can just worry about what's, internally happening and going through that process. When the opposite happens and the OBGYN starts to get, invasive and putting his fingers where they're not invited to be and starting to do procedures that they haven't been invited to do, then you can get this element where the mom or the wife kind of has these regrets that the father didn't step up and be assertive to what their develop is. And then you can see long-term relationships can suffer from that. They don't know that that's it, but the mom is so vulnerable in that position, and to have another person like inserting their fingers and in their private areas, when that's not on their birth plan, can create trauma.
So yeah, so two things. I want to address what Steven's saying here, but I also want to address what you're saying. So let me take yours first. So I think that it's really important what Tom is saying here, that having agreements with your partner, before this all comes down or comes out, so to speak,
Ooh.
is really important, that you have agreements. Trauma is real. And if the mom is traumatized, oops, so is the baby. Okay. So that trauma gets transferred from the vaginal canal. And I really want to point out the fact about what Tom is saying about the doctor's hands being in the vagina when the baby is being born. And that is another man's, smell, right? Or latex. And really, like, you really give me thought here, Tom. Like, if I had a daughter and she, was going to give birth, like, they would have to, like, I would encourage them really to do the due diligence and find out, what is it you want to do? What do you want to agree with? Because you've also told me in the past that once the baby is born, that's when they present the ideas of what, let's say, carrot juice that they should have. We're not going to use that word. And so you want to decide about what carrot juice you want or don't want. If it were me, I'd use the big 0 button. As Tom said earlier, the baby has a natural immune system, and also the immunity comes from the colostrum, right? Colostrum. Sorry, I'm not pronouncing that correctly. But these are, really, what I'm hearing, the most important part is to really have a dialogue with your partner. Now, going back to Dr. Steven Spencer, he says, instead of taking folic acid, which has severe methylation consequences, does Tom recommend liver instead of the prenatal vitamin? Go ahead, Tom. What's your thoughts on that?
As in regards to, did he say folic acid? I
Yeah,
would
it's on the
recommend.
on the.
I recommend you do not consume folic acid, and instead I recommend that you supplement with a folate supplement like a 5-THMF, so a methyl folate version. But if you're doing my complete program and you're eating, the fruits and vegetables and all the superfoods, and that mom doesn't get to an area where they're, folate deficient at all. So, it's not really, something that I have to pinpoint or specifically delve into.
Okay.
But as far as immunity, when you were talking about immunity, I wanted to touch back on that, is that the baby gets, there's colostrum as well. But when a baby attaches to a nipple and is breastfeeding, some of the mucus of the baby actually goes into the mother, and that mucus will signal to the mother's body what the baby needs to establish their immune system or to fight off an infection that there may be. And it's called spit back. And that's the process of the baby's signaling to the mother through this mucus exchange in the nipple what the baby's immune system needs, because the mother and the breastfeeding is the baby's immune system.
So, yes, and so about it was on the 12th of November. I sent you a text message. I'm sure you don't remember, but it was 1 month ago. And I took a picture and I said, you need to be speaking here. It was at the Alliance or Association of Natural Health. I was in Douglasville, Georgia, and they were speaking about what you're saying. So, these are people who all believe in natural health. Spoiler alert, we had a lot of MDs that came over from the other side.
Well, I do want to touch on the same avenue of the other way that the baby is getting oxygen and, vitamins and minerals and nutrients, and that is through the umbilical cord.
Oh, yes. Right. That's a
So
big thing.
after a baby's born and you're in that optimal hour and the father has taken the baby, presented it to the mother, it's best when the baby's, laying there skin to skin. There's no hat on the baby. You're staring at the baby's eyes. You're smelling the baby. You're establishing all these five senses. You also want to leave that umbilical cord attached, and you do not want to clamp it. So this allows the needed nutrients that are still in that umbilical cord to flow into the baby, and that's nutrients and the cells, and especially the oxygen. So as much as about 33% of the baby's like oxygen rich blood is still in the umbilical cord and the placenta, with the intent that it's going to have time to flow into the baby after birth. And we have a medical system that immediately clamps and prevents 30% of that oxygen and nutrients from ever reaching the baby. So you have a stronger baby for the rest of the baby's life by leaving that cord unclamped and letting the umbilical cord release all of those nutrients into your baby during that optimal hour or 2 hours, while you're sitting there holding the baby and letting it establish its mineral levels and its blood volume and its brain function from that placenta cord.
Now, I'm biting my lower lip this halftime when you're speaking about that. So I want to ask you a question. I know that today that they use that cord as a financial revenue stream. But my question is, was it always that way? Is that why they did it always from the get-go? Or was there ever a reason that they thought it was okay to cut that cord?
I personally believe that that it's your first inkling, that it was always known. I mean, how could you not know? You can see the the blood in the cord, and you can see it moving, and then you can see the cord become clear and lay flat, or like a clearish white and lay flat when it's empty. And then and then also you can know that after a certain amount of time that cord's going to naturally release itself and come off. I truly believe that they're clamping the cord so that when they cut it, that they can sell that cord to the highest bidder, and
Yeah.
that sold for profit, and that profit usually becomes misuse.
So yeah, and then we've got a couple great questions here. I'm just going to leave the information up here and not put the question on the screen. So Vieta Robinson says, how do you encourage and support mom when the father is absent during pregnancy and birth? And the second question is how long, which I think you pretty much answered, but so how long should the mother wait before clamping the cord? An hour? And the answer is you don't clamp the cord.
You never have to clamp the cord. The decision would be when to cut the cord. So you don't want any intervention with the baby in that first hour or 2 hours, whatever you're comfortably allowed, and then you can decide whether you want to have what's called a lotus birth, which is a word for letting that cord to naturally separate, which can be anywhere from 3 to 10 days, or you can establish, okay, the baby's sat here and now we're going to, cut the cord. Basically, a lot of people just decide on, what's most comfortable for them. What do they, and they shouldn't, but a lot of times they're like, oh, well, the grandparents will think it's weird, or my friend will think it's weird, so that's why we cut it. But you can, leave that baby attached as long as you think is possible. But the answer is that when the cord is limp, like a clear white and no longer pulsing, then you know that the baby's gotten the majority of the nutrients out of that cord, and then you can feel free to cut it. But you never want to leave the cord with the hospital, the medical center, the birth center, or with anyone. You want to take that cord home with you, keep it in sight. And that goes for the placenta, which is on the other side of the cord. You want to take the umbilical cord and the placenta, and I suggest you take that home or to a loving place, and that you plant it in your yard, and then you can plant a tree above it, or in a park or somewhere special to you, and then you can go there, and now you have a place where you can just celebrate the life of the child, or the child can go there and celebrate their own life, as opposed to allowing the medical system to sell that cord for profit.
Yeah, and I want to just words have very strong meaning, and their vibrations in the air. And so I would just want to say this, the terminology is cutting or clamping the cord, right? And when you're doing energy work and you're trying to disconnect from somebody who is harming you emotionally or physically, we call that cutting cords. So why do you want to cut the cord for your baby?
You don't. And
Right.
also, before we transition, is the placenta. So the third stage of birth is delivering the placenta. So you have to deliver the placenta. And it's very common now for, even if a mom has a completely natural birth with no intervention, that a nurse will sneak in and inject her with Pitocin in her leg after birth, because they want that to stimulate the body to deliver that placenta as fast as possible, because they're really looking to turn over that bed and get you out of there.
What's Pitocin?
What?
What is Pitocin?
The synthetic oxytocin. It's a chemical that will create contractions.
I told people that my jaw was not going to drop this time. Now you get a liar out of me.
People are reporting that women that have suggested completely natural birth, that they'll secretly inject them so that it creates contractions, so that they'll deliver the placenta faster, because they need turnover of that bed, and they want you out of there. Other nurses have reported they're seeing, certain nurses on shifts that will physically rip the placenta.
Okay, no. Can't say that. Like, my skin is about to crawl on that one. Sorry, because I can hear up there, right? Because I'm clairvoyant. Don't do that one, please, because that makes me sick. I'm sure that. Yeah. Sorry.
So you want to naturally deliver the placenta. You don't want to force out this placenta or after birth with you don't want to use any drugs or any intervention. So there's no induction, there's no pulling, there's no grabbing, there's no tearing. And then you want to take the placenta as well. You do not want to leave that with the hospital.
Yes. And so our last question here, how do you encourage and support mom when the father is absent during pregnancy and birth?
That's where you have to find an excellent birth doula. So So I work with parents, and then I help them find a birth doula, and then the birth doula is the support throughout the entire process of pregnancy. And if you find a great birth doula, they can supplement the father's role in the process, and they'll be your advocate during the birthing process. They'll be the ones that brings you food and beverage and keeps you going, rubs your shoulders, gives you massage, gives you suggestions, and plays that father's role. And there's no reason that you can't have two doulas during your birth as well. So you could have a midwife, and you could have two doulas in the room, one to act on your behalf, and one to actually be there physically for you. So that's how I think I would supplement that.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And so if you want to get in touch with Tom, you want to share again how people can get in touch with you?
So my website is sproutstanding.com. The birth one is sproutstanding.com/birth. And that's Sprout Standing. It's like outstanding with Sprout before it. Or you can go to tomwhitmire.com. You can email me at vip@sproutstanding.com. You can text me at 305-771-1414. And then all the social medias come up as Sprout Standing as well. But I'm going to be more active with text. And then you can also check out my course on my website. And on there, you can look at any upcoming retreats as well.
Wonderful. I'm so grateful to have you. I want to say thank you, Tom, for being here today. I want to thank all of our listeners. We had people on a variety of different platforms today. So exciting. People are excited to hear what you have to say, Tom. That's the bottom line. Vieta says, great information. Thanks, Jody and Tom. And, I welcome you to join us again next week. Next week, we have Rajai Keldani, and we are going to share how to release energy, negative energy, unwanted energy, whether it's in the home, in your body, for your pets, for others. And we're going to show you how to clear that and also have discernment about whether or not that energy is yours to begin with. Right? Because sometimes we carry energy, it's not even ours. So that's next week. We are on every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern and 2 o'clock Central Standard Time. We moved from the morning to the afternoon because Jody's just happier that way. So anything else you want to add before we say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah, first I'd like to thank Jody for being an amazing human being, for helping people. I had a friend that had a question on water, and I sent him to Jody, and she worked out all the math for him, and he bought a water system from her. And she's just, and he called me and tells me that, that thank you for sending him to this kind and loving soul. So thank you, Jody, for that. And I will leave you with a tip of the week. So what's on my mind this week that I probably don't talk about other times. And that is that a lot of municipalities have passed mosquito spraying bills lately. So even if you think your city isn't spraying, they probably are or might be in the future. And I'm talking about trucks that drive through a neighborhood. So I lived in a very high-end neighborhood in South Florida, and a truck would come in at midnight between 10 and noon, and it would just spray mosquito pesticides out of the back of that truck with no regulation or no thought of, could there be a dog walking or a child playing? They just drive around, and it's now becoming rampant across the nation. And you can go on your city or county. You have to track it down, but you can track down, get the phone numbers. They have charts that they're supposed to have that show you when that spraying is in your area. And if you are a pregnant or thinking about being pregnant, you can call those numbers and those hotlines and ask for mosquito spraying. And you can ask them to not spray on your block, and they will abide by that. So I have done
Get
it
out.
in
Because
Broward
let me
County.
tell you, over the summer, Andrew and I would wake up very inflamed, like eyes itchy, super inflamed. And we're like, we don't know where this is coming from. And so I felt like they were spraying, but I didn't have a way to prove it. Thank you.
Yeah, you can go on the websites. So like for Broward County, I go on Broward County Mosquito Control. For Palm Beach County, I'd put in Palm Beach County Mosquito Control. Then you look at the list, and then there'll be a phone number. Call the phone number. Whether you're pregnant or not, tell them, I would say, I'm a father, my wife is pregnant. I would like to request that between this address and this address, you do not spray mosquito spray when you spray. And they will say, I will let the guy in the truck know.
Well, I appreciate you. You are a wealth of knowledge. And I'm so grateful to call you my friend and to have you share your wisdom. And so, if anybody here can support, Tom, that would be lovely. I'm getting hate text messages as we're speaking. Sorry, that's this pause. There's somebody sending me lots of hate text messages right now.
I have that effect on people.
I don't know who this person is, but they don't like me and they don't like Jesus either. I'm like, okay, let's send them all love. Let's just send love out to everybody in the world. Shall we? Let's just send love to people and let them be able to release the energy and any anger and grief that they have and give it to God. And the person who's texting me, I send you love, I send you peace, I send you harmony. Amen, amen, amen. So be it, so be it, so be it, and so it is. So, and he's still texting. They're coming in like multiple times a second. So I'm gonna end the show, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you.